devotees here in Tirupati. Everyone's really being very, very patient. Last 2 hours. Let's see how we do. As you can see, this is some questions. There are more questions than these, but these are the questions which we're going to be addressing.
1. Isn't chanting enough to come to perfection? 2. Aren't Vaishnavas transcendental to Varnashram? 3. Won't Varnashram lead to the caste system? 4. Does it mean some devotees become known as Shudras? 5. How do we preach Varnashram to non-devotees? 6. Isn't Varnashram just about farms?
And there's more, but as it is, this is almost 40 slides, so let's move on and start with the first one.
Isn't chanting enough to come to perfection?
And of course, the answer is, sure it is. Chanting is enough. But the real question is, how are you chanting? How are we chanting? And are we really chanting that type of chanting that replaces Varnashram, or the need for the support that Varnashram gives to a devotee? And here, 1977.
Harishori, but in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's practical preaching, he only induced them to chant. Prabhupada, that is not possible for ordinary man. Harishori, what, to simply induce people to chant? Prabhupada, he only introduced just the chanting. Prabhupada, but who will chant? Who'll chant? Satsvarup, but if they won't chant, then neither will they train up in the Varnashram. That's the easiest. Prabhupada, the chanting will be there, but you cannot expect that people will chant like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They cannot even chant 16 rounds. And these rascals are going to be Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? Satsvarup, no. But if they at least will chant and take some prasad, Prabhupada, chanting will go on. That is not stopped. But at the same time, the Varnashram Dham must be established to make the way easy. Harishori, well, at least my own understanding was that the chanting was introduced in the age of Kali because Varnashram is not possible. Prabhupada, because it will cleanse the mind, chanting will not stop. Harishori, so therefore the chanting was introduced to replace all of the systems of Varnashrams and like that? Prabhupada, yes, it can replace, but who is going to replace it? The people are not so advanced. If you imitate Haridas Thakur to chant, it is not possible. Satsvarup, we tell them, go on with your job, but chant also. Prabhupada, yes, takaha apanara kaje. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, apanara kaje ki. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu recommended sthane stita, and if they do not remain in the sthana, then the sahajas chanting will come. Just like the sahajas have also got the beads, but they have got 36 women. This kind of chanting will go on. Just like our name withheld. He was not fit for sannyas, but he was given sannyas, and 5 women he was attached, and he disclosed. Therefore, Varnashram Dham is required. Simply Shobhata will not do, so the Varnashram Dham should be introduced all over the world, and Satsvarup, introduced starting with ISKCON community. Prabhupada, yes, Brahmin, Kshatriyas, there must be regular education.
So there are many things Srila Prabhupada here is saying, obviously, and one of them is that, well, of course, the holy name of the Lord is the supreme dharma, and to advance in spiritual life, you don't need anything else except to chant the holy name purely, to chant it without offense. But if you're not chanting without offense, then you need that type of support which will help you chant, that type of lifestyle which will purify your conduct and make the chanting easy. Prabhupada says it will make it easy. So it facilitates. It's just something to facilitate. It's a material convenience. But then so is this room. We don't have to be here. We can be out there in the jungle just a few hundred yards away. But we're here in this AC facility, and if we weren't here, we were over there, we wouldn't have a full house. There would be a lot less devotees. And Srila Prabhupada was well aware of that. He was well aware that in our present day, he referred to the Western devotees. He says they're not used to this type of austerity, therefore they need comfortable facilities. And Srila Prabhupada was talking about Sridham Mayapur. So, but the holy name is there, but we need the facilities in order that will help us easier chant purely, so that we can concentrate, so that we don't get distracted. And that's what Varnashram is about. Now, interestingly, that doesn't necessarily mean doing what we'd like to do. And that's why it requires real determination and dedication, because our mind, our senses, our conditioning, our education, the world around us is telling us to do a different thing. It's not telling us to practice renunciation. For instance, this idea of equality, men and women are equal, all men are equal, all women are equal. This is not Varnashram. It's not about equality, because guna karma vibhagasa, there are three modes of material nature and so many combinations, and therefore different natures and different types of work. It's not how I was brought up. For instance, in the United States, everyone's brought up. Everyone can become the President of the United States, or at least anyone is eligible. It sounds good, but it's a horrible concept. It's a horrible thing that anyone in a country can become the king of that country. Is he qualified? Nowadays, mostly they're lawyers, although our latest candidate is just a businessman. But lawyers don't necessarily have a good reputation in the world, and especially what has lawyership got to do with leadership? Who is trained to be a leader? And we'll see a quote from Srila Prabhupada in that regard. So here Prabhupada is emphasizing this point that yes, everyone should be educated, and devotees should be educated according to their natures, so that that will facilitate their practice of devotional service, because, as we'll see later on, we're not transcendentally situated. And even if we are, we still do it to set the example as the transcendentalists of the past, with the exception of like a Maharaj Rishabdev, a Shukadev Goswami, who just left the world behind. So next question. Keep it turned on.
Aren't Vaishnavas transcendental to Varnashram? As long as one is not satiated by fruit of activity and has not awakened his taste for devotional service by Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, one has to act according to the regulative principles of the Vedic injunctions.
I've addressed this point somewhat, but it's something that we really need to be honest about, is that you can't be transcendental to something and not be transcendental to something else. Either we are transcendental to the modes of material nature and we're unaffected by the modes of material nature, in which case you're transcendental to the need for Varnashram, because all the principles of Varnashram are spontaneously manifesting within the heart, because one is then on the stage of bhava or prema, directly connected with Krishna. He's above the four defects of a conditioned soul, and then you don't have to tell him what to do, but everything is happening naturally. I hope we don't run out of power before the end of this presentation and this microphone. But if we're not transcendental, if we're not transcendentally situated, we should not think that we are just transcendental to Varnashram. Krishna here is saying, this is a verse I'd already presented earlier. Here's another one.
Until one revives one's direct knowledge of the spirit soul and drives away the illusory identification with the material body and mind caused by the three modes of nature, one must cultivate those things in the mode of goodness. By increasing the mode of goodness, one automatically can understand and practice religious principles, and by such practice, transcendental knowledge is awakened.
So, Krishna here is talking about the modes of material nature. This is the verse that I referred to earlier. Cultivating things in the mode of goodness. And he says, until one revives one's direct knowledge of the spirit soul. In other words, unless you're completely free from any bodily identification, and the mind, caused by the modes of material nature, one is transcendental, cultivate the things in the mode of goodness. What are those things in the mode of goodness? This is what Varnashram tells us. Tasya kartaram apimam. Varnashram establishes What are the things in the mode of goodness in terms of objects, activities for a grihasta, for a brahmachari, for a sannyasi, and what are those things that you have to stay away from? What is the conduct? So many different types of things. And another quote.
Hari Shori, but in our community, if the beings were trained up as Vaishnavas, Prabhupada, yes, Hari Shori, then how will we be able to make divisions in our society? Prabhupada, Vaishnava is not so easy. The Varnasrama Dharma should be established to become a Vaishnava. It is not so easy to become Vaishnava. Hari Shori, no, it's not a cheap thing. Prabhupada, yes. Therefore this should be made. Vaishnava to become Vaishnava is not so easy. If Vaishnava to become Vaishnava is so easy, why so many fall down, fall down? It is not easy. The sannyas is for the highest qualified Brahmin, and simply by dressing like a Vaishnava, that is, fall down.
So Srila Prabhupada emphasizes in this conversation, this point of fall down, is that although we're dressing as Vaishnavas, although we have all the rights and opportunities for spiritual advancement, still history shows that devotees are very much conditioned and under the modes of material nature. So he's very generous in terms of calling us Vaishnav, but here Srila Prabhupada is making a distinction. But what's a Vaishnav? Who's a real Vaishnav? It's not an easy thing to become a Vaishnav. And in order to become a Vaishnava, therefore Srila Prabhupada said, yes, the Varnasrama Dharma should be established to become a Vaishnav. So to become that type of Vaishnav, to become transcendental, then Srila Prabhupada is saying. And another quote.
Well, Hari Shori, no, it's not a cheap thing. Prabhupada, yes. Therefore this should be made. Vaishnava, to become a Vaishnava is not so easy. If Vaishnava to become Vaishnava is so easy, why so many fall down, fall down? It is not so easy. The sannyas is for the highest qualified Brahmin, and simply by dressing like a Vaishnava, that is, fall down.
Sorry, there's two slides, same one. We'll have to erase that one. Okay, next question.
Won't Varnashram lead to the caste system?
Sure, it can. Won't devotional service lead to Sahajaism? It has. But does that mean that we don't chant Hare Krishna just because there's a potential to be Sahaja? Of course not. So just because Varnashram can degrade, that doesn't mean we shouldn't practice it. That's not how we approach things in the world. And so many things can go wrong. Can't I have an accident if I get in my car today? Well, sure you can, but does that mean everyone's going to stay in Gita Nagari because there's a potential that someone's going to have an accident? So, but we do the right thing. We drive carefully, we take care to be awake and so on, not be too tired. So, it has, and it's really made Varnashram very difficult, both for devotees to accept and what to speak of the world outside us. That's going to be real serious challenge.
Because this scientific division of 4 Varnas and 4 Ashram is now being extinguished, the entire world is being governed by unwanted men who have no training in religion, politics or social order, and it is in a very deplorable condition. In the institution of 4 Varnas and 4 Ashrams, there are regular training principles for the different classes of men. Just as in the modern age, there is a necessity for engineers, medical practitioners and electricians, and they are properly trained in different scientific institutions. Similarly, in former times, the higher social orders, namely the intelligent class, the Brahmanas, the ruling class, the Kshatriyas, and the mercantile class, the Vaishyas, were properly trained. Bhagavad Gita describes the duties of Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. When there is no such training, one simply claims that he is born in a Brahman or Kshatriya family. He is therefore a Brahman or Kshatriya, even though he performs the duties of a Shudra. Such undue claims to being a higher caste man make the system of scientific social orders into a caste system, completely degrading the original system. Thus society is now in chaos, and there is neither peace nor prosperity. It is clearly stated herein that unless there is the vigilance of a strong king, impious, unqualified men will claim a certain status in society, and that will make the social order perish.
This is a really wonderful description by Srila Prabhupada as to the degradation of Varnashram. And Varnashram degraded for two main reasons. One is because the claiming of some type of authority, be it Brahminical or mercantile, and especially governance, became a hereditary affair. And when in the 9th canto, we're hearing the different 9th canto, and then it's also in the 11th canto, the different kings of Kali Yuga. Then you can, especially in the 11th canto, when Kali Yuga already starts, then you can see how some king's minister takes over, and then some Chandala takes over, and he becomes the king. Why? Just because of bodily strength, not because they were qualified. And so in this way, the system of governance has become completely topsy-turvy, as unqualified men. And how do they become qualified? By education. So Srila Prabhupada emphasizes this thing over and over again, but you have to qualify, you have to educate the right person. You have to educate for leadership. Of course, everyone needs a certain level of leadership, whether it be Brahmins and so on, but to lead society, you need to educate those who have leadership qualities. You need to educate Kshatriyas, those who have the qualification. Everyone, Vaishnavas, can all receive Brahminical initiation. That doesn't make every Brahmin initiated devotee a Brahmana. You become a Brahmin when you have the qualities of a Brahmin. So even in Vedic culture, the top three Varnas all received Brahminical initiation. They all received initiation, but only the Brahmins were the Brahmins. Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, they also. For us, Shudra Sambhavan, everyone receives Brahminical initiation, but you don't become a Brahmin. You become a Brahmin when you have the qualities of a Brahmin. And those qualities of a Brahmin are very clearly stated. Dvi Sadguna Ravindanabha. So Bhagavatam is full of the qualification, 12 qualities of Brahmin, 9 qualities of a Brahmin. So Brahminical qualification. And of course, this is how the degradation of Varnashram took place. My father's a Brahmin, therefore I'm a Brahmin. I get on a rickshaw in Vrindavan, and the rickshaw wala pulls out a Brahmin thread and tells me I'm a Brahmin. Look, what are you doing here? What are you driving a rickshaw if you're a Brahmin? Brahmins don't drive rickshaws. So why? Because according to your social status, you only have a right to certain types of activities, and you don't have right to do something else. And therefore, there is actually social order. Not that anyone does anything. So, yes, it can degrade. But if we study devotees' natures, which once again is a different thing, it's done by astrology, it's done by those people who know. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Srila Prabhupada explains how in Vedic culture, by the age of 12 or even earlier, then young boys are determined by parents, guru, elders, and so on, the panchayat. They test them. They already sort of know his nature, but they test them. And if he passes the test, then he has a varna. Otherwise he has no varna until then. Only when he shows the qualities of that. So if your father is a Brahmin, if you have Brahminical qualities, then fine. But if you don't, then what qualities do you have? So this is a very important verse that Narada Muni states, Yatra ya lakshanam proktam punksa varna viganjikam. He states this, I think, in the 11th chapter of the 7th canto. So whatever qualities one manifests, a person should be accepted to be in that particular varna. It doesn't matter what his birth is. It's this lakshana which is important. All right, let's go to another one.
Satsaru, but at least if there is extreme exploitation by a king or dictator, it can't be changed. But the people, Prabhupada, there cannot be exploitation if things are made in order. Just like the Kshatriya should be trained up as Kshatriya. Then he is king. Not that a Bhangi by vote becomes a king. This is education.
This is the very beginning of this February 77 discussion. And it didn't start off as Varnashram. This is where Prabhupada sort of taking it into a Varnashram discussion. It started off about leadership and the lack of qualification of leadership. And Satsrup Maharaj is bringing up this very relevant point, that leaders dictate. They end up becoming dictators. And they exploit. And Prabhupada says, no, exploitation is there when he doesn't have the qualities and he's not trained. But if he's a trained king, then he won't exploit. And he knows what to do because he's been trained like that. So this education is such an important thing. And certainly we live in a society where globally everyone places so much importance on education. Unfortunately, where things that everyone's being educated in is Shudra's business or lower. People aren't really being educated in very important things. Education, computers, mathematics, technology, all of these things. These are all unnecessary things, useless things. None of them you can eat to start with. Everyone is getting all kinds of degrees and diplomas so that 99% of the world's population is dependent on 1%, the farmers. That's a pretty dangerous situation to be in. If anyone wanted to exploit their power, they would, and they could. Anyway, but that's another topic. So here Srila Prabhupada says, no, if they're properly raised, if there's the proper culture, if there's the proper training, then a leader will not exploit. A Brahmin will not exploit. They will do the right thing. But there has to be the right training. This morning I was just reading a quote from Shruti Kirti's Prabhupada Uvacha. And Prabhupada says, nowadays, says, if a boy sees a girl, he goes up to him and says, oh, I like you. Would you like to go out? Would you like to go on a date? Prabhupada was, but anyway, he's quoting Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, in my time, we boys, we used to think the same way. Oh, that's a nice girl. But because the culture was different, we couldn't talk to them. He said the culture is so important. So even though something may be going on within the mind, but still the